Mark Cuban's time as the majority owner of the Dallas Pro Bouncy Ball team has come to an end. He is going to no longer be the majority owner of the Mavericks, a shocking ending. It's not technically an ending, but it really is in many ways. Now, if you didn't see this, and possibly you missed it, we learned that Mark Cuban has agreed to sell the vast majority of ownership, the majority stake in the NBA franchise that plays deep in the heart of Texas, to Miriam Adelson, the wife of the late casino magnate Sheldon Adelson. So the valuation, approximately $3.5 billion. $3.5 billion. Good return on investment for Mark Cuban compared to when he bought the Dallas basketball team. So Shams Charania, who is in a heated battle with Woj, Shams Charania tells us that Mark Cuban will retain a small stake in the Dallas basketball team, and for at least now, he will preside over basketball operations. For now. But likely not for that long. So let us discuss the question. Why in the world is Mark Cuban selling a majority stake in the Mavericks? His love and joy, the Dallas Mavericks. Why would he be doing this? So I've got cockpit, daily double, and pineapple upside down cake. And we'll combine all of these things together, and we are going to make a championship, which the Mavericks won with Mark Cuban as the majority owner. So, this is kooky. The story is kooky, right? It's completely out of the blue. Mark Cuban is so intertwined in the DNA of the Mavericks. It's hard to imagine the Mavericks without Mark Cuban. Now, I do remember a time they had other people owning that team. I also remember them not being very good most of that time. I recall that. But Mark Cuban is now going to be on the outs in terms of majority ownership. And it's so unusual because Mark Cuban is a legendary whore, an attention whore, right? Chest puffs, pelvic thrust, arrogant struts, all that. Presto, out of the blue, he wakes up one morning and says, you know what, sell my toy, my lovely toy. I don't need my toy anymore. I'll sell it. So something is clearly simmering in the world. So what I did is I started hitting up people that know more than me. I mean, what's going on? Like, give me the inside skinny. I want to know what's really going on. And of course, the streets are talking. And the general consensus is, we don't know. We don't know. Now, there are two main narratives that are bouncing around the pinball machine, the echo chamber. And so as the streets are talking, these two narratives on why Mark Cuban is selling the majority stake in the Mavericks, these are polar opposites, right? Because on one hand, you have the crowd of people that say this must be health-related, that Mark Cuban must be sick, there must be some undisclosed illness, that he wouldn't sell the Mavericks, the majority stake in the team, unless there was something health-related. He has to slow down. People pointing out there's estate planning and things like that. But on the other hand, you're getting, on the opposite pole, you're getting people saying, well, he's just getting his affairs in order, Mark Cuban, because he wants to sit in the cockpit and he wants to advise the flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, and we have to clear the runway here to try to get to the White House. So of those two options, if those are the only two options, I'm sure there's probably a third, but if those are the only two options, we'd rather have that than some illness. But nobody knows. People think they know, but they don't know. Now, part two of this diatribe, would Mark Cuban actually have a shot of winning the presidency of the United States? Now, my friends who cover politics tell me it's not whether or not Mark Cuban will win, it's whether or not people can convince him that he can win. And that's really the argument. You're not going to waste all that money and time. And Mark Cuban's got some skeletons. There have been some scandals with the Mavericks involving employees in the front office, and all that stuff will come out. Everything that Mark Cuban's ever done, you run for president, negative, it all gets out. Now, one thing we've learned in the last 10 years, it doesn't necessarily matter, right? I mean, he still can win. It doesn't matter. But there are a lot of reasons to run for president, and not all of them involve actually winning. And Mark Cuban would be the personification of what is the new unicorn in politics as a now soon-to-be former majority owner of a sports team. But this would be the Daily Double. It would be the Daily Double because you have the crossover from pop culture to politics. Like Mark Cuban, this is the playbook, right? Donald Trump did this. He was the host of The Apprentice, which is a very popular show on NBC. He became the president. Mark Cuban hosted Shark Tank. Now, I've only seen Shark Tank a few times. I guess it's done pretty well. It's been on television a long time. We should also point out he is not only dumping majority ownership of the Mavericks, he's also off that TV show. He announced this week, Mark Cuban, that he is saying bye-bye to Shark Tank after 16 seasons that show has been on there. May Benny versus the Penny please be on for 16 years. My God. Anyway, Mark Cuban, he's got to be thinking here, like, he's got a shot to win should he put his name in the hopper. And he probably figures youth can be served. Like Mark Cuban, it's very rare in life that you're 65 years old and you're a baby. But in politics, that's the way it is, right? He's a spring chicken. President Biden's 81, Donald Trump's 77. So we guarantee you that Mark Cuban has had, at the very least, conversations through intermediaries, back channel conversations that you have to talk to donors and talk to lawyers, and you have to look at maps and all that. So we'll keep an eye on this. And will we see some kind of splashy announcement? Will we see the denial, non-denial, where he says, I'm not going to run, and then he's plotting behind the scenes to run? Does Mark Cuban suddenly take an interest all of a sudden in our brothers and sisters who live in Iowa and New Hampshire? And then the other part of it is, well, which team would he run for?
Iowa.
Yeah. I don't know. Everyone's assuming Team Blue, not Team Red, but there's also the wild card, which would be as an independent. But we'll keep an eye on it. Mark Cuban, the big name in our world in sports, and it appears that he's done. You can't imagine he's going to run the Mavericks for that much longer. If you bought an NBA team, why would you have somebody else run it? Make a lot of sense. Now, the last word here. Are the Mavericks guaranteed to stay in Las Vegas? So the popular opinion by popular people is yes. That there's no reason to think that the Mavericks would ever leave Dallas. Why would you? It's one of the top media markets in the country. But one thing that we have learned in recent years is it doesn't matter, right? And so the Mavericks, if you ask me the question, are they guaranteed to stay in Las Vegas? My answer is not by a long shot, right? Dallas is the number 5 television market, which is really, these are just TV shows, right? Can you get ratings in your television market? Dallas is the number 5 TV market in terms of television audience. Vegas, it's moving on up, but last I checked, they were still around 40 to 42 in television market size. So that's a pretty big gap there. But regardless, in the sporting world right now, it's like a classic pineapple upside down cake. You're talking about a gooey, a lot of caramel, and a mess. So the owner, this woman, the widow who bought the Dallas Mavericks, she's 78 years old. So she's old enough to run for president. We assume her kids are going to take over sooner rather than later. And as we understand it, they were all raised in Sin City. So there's a connection there. Last we checked, Vegas is all horny for an NBA franchise. They'd love to get one. So there is a dimension where the Mavericks would leave Dallas and go to Vegas. They already have the ready-made star. It's like Hamburger Helper. You just pour some water in there, and you're good to go with the little packet. Because you got Luka Doncic, a star, could be the headliner on Vegas. You got your Vegas show. You need a headliner if you're going to play the Strip, and so that would that would make some sense. Now, the reporting is, well, they're going to build a new arena, and once Texas gets gambling, they're going to have slot machines all over the arena and the sports book and the whole thing, the whole to-do, right? And maybe that happens. It's possible that happens, but it's also conceivable that they work out some kind of deal where the team moves to Vegas and then Dallas gets some expansion version of the Mavericks. But the bigger city thing doesn't guarantee you stay, because if you look at the San Francisco Bay Area and Oakland, they lost the Raiders. I don't count the Warriors because they just moved across the Bay Bridge, so I don't count the Warriors. But they're still in the area. But the Raiders left for a much smaller market in Vegas, and the Athletics are plotting to leave for a much smaller location in the future.